Sorry, boy, but his captain's got to teach his men what happens to those what cross him.
Captain's got to teach stuff.
Good afternoon from the Batcave. It is Monday, August 11th, 2025, and we're going to keep going on. If you remember, we're going to jump into Daniel here, and then we're going to jump back into Ezekiel. I have been reading commentaries on Daniel, including Hippolytus and Theodoret of Cyrus, which is like a guy from before Augustine and Jerome. It's like 378. I have read Jerome's commentary on Daniel, who he cites everybody that came before him. I believe he cites Theodoret. And then I just found by accident, I was looking at Julius Sextus Africanus's chronography of the earth, and he uses Daniel's 70 weeks prophecy as part of his calculation there, and he gets some things wrong, but pretty close. As I'm reading all these things, plus we realize there is multiple bad translations of Daniel floating around, that the early church felt the need to correct it, and it's closer to the Masoretic. But they're trying to correct the old Greek Daniel, which has some jacked up stuff in it, especially related to Daniel's 70 weeks prophecy. It looks like it could have been corrupted by the Maccabees to try to make it look like they were the fulfillment, which is actually prophesied in Daniel, that people were going to try to self-fulfill the vision, but they're not going to succeed. And before I get into Daniel's prophecies, I just want to show you guys something that I believe the Lord has made it clear that Daniel would not be understood until we get to the last days. It could not be understood until we get to the last days. And while those last days seem to start with the beginning of the church, and there are certain things that are unsealed from Daniel in the book of Revelation. Certainly the Lord talks about it being unsealed, and it's very clearly referencing a lot of stuff that's in Daniel. There are things that remain sealed even in the book of Revelation, which John is not allowed to write. And then when we go to Daniel, right at the end, chapter 12, he tells Daniel, after his final vision, he says, "Go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed until the time of the end. Many shall be purified and made white and tried, but the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand." So notice it said they're sealed until the time of the end, after Daniel says, "But I understood not." So he is talking about the meaning of all these visions. He doesn't understand it, which is kind of like what Peter says. He says how the prophets said things that they didn't understand, but they wrote down what the Holy Spirit was giving them. Well, Daniel's saying, "I don't understand," and he's like, "That's not your business, Daniel. Go on your way." He tells them how he is going to be resurrected to stand in his lot in the last days. But in the meantime, many will be purified and made white and tried. That is the church coming. This is summarizing the whole church age. But the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. So when? Well, he says, he talks about the time of Daniel's 70th week here. And he says, "From the time the daily sacrifice is taken away and the abomination of desolation is set up, there shall be 1,290 days." So there's the first half of Daniel's 70th week. That is the second half of Daniel's 70th week. And then he says, "Blessed is he that waits and comes to the 1,335 days. That is when the resurrection of those who die for taking the mark of the beast take place." And then he said, "But go thy way till the end, for you shall rest and stand in your lot in the last days." So notice he's saying, "Go thy way till the end." So this is the end. And this all starts with Daniel seeing these angels go. How long to the end of these wonders? And he tells them, he takes them through the first half of Daniel's 70th week to the point of the rapture and the resurrection of the dead, and Michael rising up to cast Satan out of heaven, and the Antichrist dying. He doesn't cover the second half of the week in this vision. He does in other visions, but he doesn't cover it in this vision. But he says, he swears it's going to be a time and a half. So there's 360-day years is what he's counting. And then it's to that Daniel says, "I don't understand. I heard, but I understand not. And then I said to the Lord, what shall be the end of these things?" So what is going to happen after this 1,300? This 3.5 years. What's going to happen after that? What is the end of these things? And he's going to say, "Oh, many will be purified, made white, and tried." Well, what's going on? Well, the final purification of the church is the test to take the mark of the beast or die for those who are not raptured. And he just mentioned those who are raptured, but now he's mentioning those who are left behind, and they're going to be they're tried and made white. In other words, it's going to be revealed through this purgatorial experience of not taking the mark of the beast and getting your head chopped off that they were born again. Okay, so they're purified, made white, and then at the end of that they rest and at the end of that he is the 1,305 days, and he says, and at the end he will rest and stand in his lot at the end of days. What does that mean? That's when they're resurrected. So he's bringing them right to the point when those who don't take the mark of the beast are resurrected, and telling Daniel he's going to be resurrected with them. Okay? So he says he's going to stand in thy lot at the end of the days. So that doesn't necessarily mean he's not going to be resurrected to that point. He could be resurrected with the rapture. He could be accounted as those who die in Christ, and he's resurrected with the rapture. But he's not going to be standing in Jerusalem, because if he's raptured, he's caught up. He's not standing in the land, okay? So when he says you're seeing him standing in his lot, he's talking about his land, his inheritance, and that is all going to be covered in Ezekiel 40 through 48. So we'll get into that later. So I just wanted to show you guys this, because when I start getting into these old commentaries and this stuff, it's very clear there's something in the brains of everybody, where everybody, it's like if you put all these commentaries together, they all have certain things right and certain things wrong. But nobody gets the calculations of Daniel right. And I only found one guy who gets the starting point right, which is Julius Sixtus Africanus. But he doesn't get the ending point right, because he's relying on calculations from the Jews that he believes are supposed to be 354-day years. Okay, so he's off by his year count by 6 days, and he ends up saying that the 70 weeks are fulfilled by the point Christ starts his ministry. Okay. Doesn't make sense, and he's not paying attention carefully to the prophecy. But you have Hippolytus of Rome doing the same thing. Both of these guys think the world is 5,500 years old at the time Christ came, based on the Septuagint. They have some really wacky histories, even though they're lining up with all the histories they know, which are much more ancient than our histories. And they have more... They have more accuracy in some very old things than some of the stuff that we have, because they have contemporary histories from their own era. But he's got like 1,000. Julius Africanus has like over 1,000 years between Moses and Cyrus, when there's really only 700-800 years. I think he's got like 1,200 years. So, I mean, these guys are just throwing all these years all over the place, and somehow they end up with this 5,500 year count, which is roughly the same as the Septuagint says. And then I read Hippolytus of Rome, and he has that same thing, and he literally makes this his only proof. He doesn't try to do a calculation, and he doesn't mention Julius Sextus Africanus. I thought he got his stuff from Julius Sextus Africanus, but it looks like Africanus wrote his stuff possibly after Hippolytus. So there's obviously a common source of thinking the world is 5,500 years old. But what he claims is that the proof that the world is 5,500 years old is found typologically in the dimensions of the Ark of the Covenant. And so he says, at the time then the Savior appeared and showed his own body to the world, born of the Virgin, who was the overlaid ark with pure gold. So the whole mystical idea of Mary being the Ark of the Covenant is already coming in his day. Hippolytus seems to be involved with that. And says, with the Word within and the Holy Spirit without, so that the truth is demonstrated and the ark made manifest. So that's the Virgin, that's Mary, okay? So that, if you wonder where the whole idea of Mary being the Ark of the Covenant is, it comes from Hippolytus. He was into some weird Catholic stuff, okay? He did write the first commentary on Daniel, and he does have some true things in there that I also found. He also has some false things in there. So don't listen to me saying, hey, Hippolytus and Irenaeus agree with my timing perspective, as me saying a full endorsement of anything that they say, okay? So it says, from the birth of Christ we must reckon 500 years remain to make up the 6,000. So he's literally, this was the common belief, is that 500 years after Christ, the millennium would be over. Or I'm sorry, 500 years after Christ, they would enter into the millennium. And then Victorinus of Patau, who is an Origenist, is going to say, no, they're in the millennium right now, and they're going to have 500 years until the end of the millennium. Somehow, he throws in 1,000 years there. Like, he's just like, even though the guys who came before him are saying there's 6,000 years of history, they're 500 years away from 6,000 years of history, so they're expecting the return of Christ in 500 years. Victorinus is going to act like, oh, there was, we're just going to put the millennium starting at Christ arbitrarily, and then we're going to say there's 500 years until the end of the 7,000 years, or until the end of the millennium. Okay, why are these ideas so crazy by men who seem to want to be in the truth and faithful? Well, because Jesus said you couldn't understand it until the last days. He said many will go to and fro and knowledge will increase, and you're just going to have all these weird and wacky ideas. So we're in the last days. We're very close, and I think we're closer to understanding. People are going to and fro, and knowledge is increasing. So we have a lot more information to better discern the history that these things are written on. And I've been reading these commentaries, and a lot of them are pretty accurate when lining up Daniel's prophecies to history. They're mostly saying the same thing, but they have a lot of conjecture and speculation in there because they're histories of the eras of the Greeks and the Persians and stuff like that aren't as good. And a lot of Daniel's prophecies cover the areas of the Greeks and Persians. So we have a lot better information on these histories now, which we can just get right from Wikipedia. So the cool thing about that is then I can go take that information back to the original Hebrew of this and find out it is very, very accurate. And I mean, when we get to Daniel 11, I actually wrote out that whole thing myself from the Hebrew or from Aramaic, I think it was. I think it was Hebrew and Aramaic. But anyways, I can take the whole thing and I can line it up to history from Wikipedia and be like, wow, that is dead spot on. And it is so spot on that it's like it's even more accurate than these other guys who had bad history and yet tried to interpret Daniel on that basis. It's actually much more accurate than they would have said, and they're stretching Daniel to fit what they think their history is. And I'm going to show you without stretching Daniel that it fits like dead nuts on to what was prophesied. So we are going to start in 7, and then we're going to go back and we're going to read 7, and then we're going to read 8 because they're both in the reign of Belshazzar. And then we're going to go back and read 6 because that's going to be the fall of Belshazzar and the rise of the Persians. So we're going to read these chapters out of order. We're going to read these prophecies out of order. And you want to understand historically, Daniel had been given his prophecy of the statue with the 4 metals and then the toes of iron and clay probably somewhere in the ballpark of 20 plus years before this. Okay, so he's been hanging on to this prophecy about 4 kingdoms, starting with Nebuchadnezzar's, leading up to a final kingdom that's going to be destroyed by this rock that comes from heaven, and that's going to grow into a kingdom that's going to inherit the whole earth, okay? He's been hankering to understand the deeper meaning of this because he doesn't know about a church. He's looking for the restoration of the kingdom of Israel, okay? He's looking for that. He's looking at the prophets, and he's saying, we got Isaiah, we've got Jeremiah. I mean, these are the main guys. They're talking about Israel going in captivity and then being restored. We've got Micah talking about Israel going into captivity and being restored. So we've got these prophets who talked about Israel going into captivity to Babylon. They're all saying to Babylon and then being restored from Babylon. And this is going to be the first instance of God exposing on that because he just gave Nebuchadnezzar a prophecy about how there's going to be, there's 4 kingdoms. So Babylon's the head of a body of kingdoms, which is actually 4 kingdoms. So he's expanding the whole Babylon thing. So it's not just going to be just Babylon and then we're going to go into captivity, or we're going to be freed from captivity. Babylon is the head of this kingdom of Gentile captivity, just like Christ is the head of the church. Okay, and so just as like the church is going to go down through the ages and be all these people who live and die and blah, 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 but Christ is the head of that. And ultimately it composes a body of his people. Well, Nebuchadnezzar is the head of an empire that holds the people of God in captivity, at least in the flesh and in in political terms. Okay? And so Daniel is trying to figure out this stuff, and he's just like, he's studying the other prophets. We know he's studying Jeremiah. We know Ezekiel's probably studying him, because Ezekiel knows of Daniel. But these prophecies are actually given after all Ezekiel's stuff's done. So if Ezekiel knows any of Daniel's prophecies, it's just going to be the first one he interpreted of Nebuchadnezzar. Daniel is basically just known as a righteous man, up there with Noah and Job. And that's all Ezekiel says about him. But he is pointing to him, and he also mentions this 7-year period between the Gog-Magog invasion and then this millennial kingdom with the temple restored and the larger Jerusalem and the land being divvied out again. Okay, and that land's going to be divvied out different than it was divvied out before. Okay, so Ezekiel has all this stuff, and the 7-year period is in there. Daniel is going to prophesy after Ezekiel about this 7-year period. Okay, so that's why we're going to go back and read Ezekiel, and it's kind of out of order because it's about the millennium. But Daniel's prophecies are about this 7-year period at the end of the Gog-Magog invasion, and that whole prophecy would have been given in a town called Tel Aviv, which is not that far from Babylon. So the Jews of Babylon would have had Ezekiel and Daniel pretty quickly. I mean, you're talking by probably 20, 30 years before they come out of the Babylonian captivity. I'm sorry, Daniel leads right up to the days of Cyrus. So Cyrus is the one who lets them go free. So by the time they're going back from Babylon to Israel, they have Ezekiel and Daniel in tow. They are able to line these two guys up. They don't know what they mean, but they have them in tow, and both of them are describing the end of the captivity, but it's different than what they're experiencing. So there's a greater fulfillment to this. So they're going back to Israel, but they're under the dominion of the Persians. They're not sovereign. They don't have a king. There's a lot of stuff missing from what they're expecting for fulfillment based on Ezekiel and based on Isaiah and Jeremiah and Micah. We're looking for a king here. We don't have a king, okay? So this is Belshazzar, who is going to be the last ruler of Babylon. He's actually ruling under his father Nabonidus, who seems to give himself a self-imposed exile after taking the throne. You're going to have like 3 guys after Nebuchadnezzar who are all going to have short reigns because they're all overthrowing each other. And then Belshazzar's dad, Nabonidus, takes over. And it seems like the scholarly speculation is that Belshazzar was probably over his father taking over, and his father was old, and then he just ended up ruling. So history is going to count... these 3 short reign kings. You can read all about this on Wikipedia if you want to. Before you get to Nabonidus, that's Belshazzar's father. Nabonidus is actually ruling. Belshazzar is actually the de facto king of Babylon, the city. Okay? And then he is going to get sacked by the Persians in a few years, but I think he actually spends like a decade. So when he says the first year Belshazzar, king of Babylon, it's not really certain when this is, because if you look at Daniel 5, it just says Belshazzar the king made a great feast to thousands of his lords. It doesn't say what year this is. So this first year of Belshazzar could be when he starts ruling Babylon, or it could be when his father dies. So it could be technically a few years after he starts ruling Babylon. We don't know for certain. But the point is, it's after Babylon takes up rule Babylon. It's within a decade of his collapse to the Persians. And Daniel's prophecies are mostly about the coming of the Persians and then the coming of the Greeks once the Persians are in charge. So he's been given a prophecy of these 4 successive kingdoms. The 4th one is going to be met by Christ, but he is prophesying to each kingdom who's going to replace them. Okay, he doesn't really get into the Romans. He signifies the Romans in Nebuchadnezzar's statue, and he signifies the coming of the Romans very slightly in his prophecy about Antiochus, but he doesn't really prophesy about what happens with the Romans. Just that Christ is going to be cut off, and they're going to destroy the temple, but he doesn't name the Romans by name. He never really indicates the Romans, even though they are a kingdom at this time. They are existing as a kingdom. So if you look at Rome, they are a kingdom by 735 BC. So why is that? Why does this prophecy not name the Romans by name? It describes them, but it doesn't name them by name. And this is what's going to get prophecy guys like Joel Richardson to say it's not about Rome and it was about the caliphate. Okay, no. It's about Rome, and every commentator we've ever had has believed it was about Rome until Joel Richardson after 9/11. Okay? But why does he not name Rome by name? He talks about the ships of Kittim. Well, I have a little bit of a theory about that, and that could be, it's a possibility that because of just free will, God may have not decided yet that he was going to use the Romans as that kingdom. It could have been Carthage. It could have been some other people that are going to overcome the Greeks. And it depends on how they behave themselves. It depends on how responsive they are to what God's doing. Because he names Grecia. He names the Persians. But they're much closer in history. And that could be, I don't know, but for whatever reason, he doesn't name the Romans specifically, okay? And that leads to some people speculating nowadays. Don't speculate. We've pretty much always had the same interpretations of these things, and we're going to walk through them. And so how you can see why they've always been interpreted this way is pretty clear, okay? So we already know as a starting point, Daniel has a prophecy of 4 kingdoms. And at the 4th kingdom, even though it's depicted in a mysterious way, Christ is going to come and he is going to set up a kingdom that is going to take over the whole world and never go away. Okay? So, who are these 4 kingdoms? We want to make sure we understand it's the same 4 kingdoms he's talking about through all his prophecies. And even his last prophecy describes the coming of the Romans, even though it's not just naming them Romans by name. I don't know why. Okay? Maybe because they're not known as the kingdom of the Romans yet. Maybe they're a people and it's like Rome is a city, it's established, but it's not like, they're not known as the Roman Empire yet. Maybe that's why, I don't know. Anyways, he says, in the first year of Belshazzar, the king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and vision upon his bed, and he wrote a dream and he told the sum of the matters. Daniel spoke and said, I saw my vision by the night, and behold, 4 winds of heaven strove against the great sea. Okay, so this is going to be your first instance of the great sea being a metaphor for the masses of the Gentile people. Okay, they're like a sea being tossed by the winds and waves, and the 4 winds of heaven striving on the seas is representing the coming of these 4 kingdoms that are going to draw the tides of people to themselves as the dominant nations over history, okay? So he says, and 4 great beasts came up from the sea, diverse from one another. So those are 4 governments that are going to come up, okay? The first was like a lion, and had eagle's wings. And I beheld until the wings thereof were plucked up, and it was lifted from the earth and made to stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. So I'm going to get into the interpretation in a little bit. We're just going to read it right now. And behold, another beast, the second like a bear, and it was raised up itself on one side. It had 3 ribs in the mouth, and in between the teeth of it, and they said unto it, arise, devour much flesh. So they are the 4 winds of heaven. Okay. So the winds are saying, arise, devour much flesh. After this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had upon its back the 4 wings of a fowl. The beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. So it's got wings too. Okay. Now notice that he's got 2 of these with wings. Pay attention to this, okay? After this I saw the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth, and it devoured and broke into pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it, and it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. Now we got a 4th beast. Notice we have no wings, okay? But we do have iron teeth, and it brake into pieces and stamped the residue with the feet thereof. Now we already have iron in one of his things, and iron represents that 4th kingdom. So this iron is going to be important. I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. Okay. Now, if the 10 horns represent men, the fact that this horn has eyes like the eyes of a man is strange. If they're men, why wouldn't you just say it had eyes, or that they all represent men? Okay, so it says, "I beheld till thrones were cast down." This is what it says. This can actually just mean set down. So I held before thrones were set down or set up, and the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was as white as snow, and the hair of his head was like the pure wool, and his throne was like a fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. So this is the same thing seen as in Revelation 1. This is the Ancient of Days. This is the Father in an kind of angelic manifestation in the third heaven. And he is having the 24 elders sitting around him. This is not Michael Heiser's supposed divine council. These are men. Their names are written on the New Jerusalem. There are 24 of them. Okay? These are the 12 patriarchs of Israel and the 12 apostles. That's who they are. There's 24 of them. Okay? It's not rocket science because they're all in one book. It describes the 24 elders, which would literally be counted as the heads of the 12 tribes of Israel, who each have their own government division and their own basically state or province of land in Ezekiel's vision. Okay? Ezekiel, Daniel, and Zechariah are the main books pulled into the book of Revelation. Then you have the 12 apostles who were told that they're going to sit on 12 thrones ruling over the 12 tribes of Israel. So you basically have the patriarchal heads and the spiritual heads, flesh and spirit. Remember, Israel's going to get resurrected, who are going to rule over Israel in the last days, and their names are all on the New Jerusalem, okay? Not the divine council of angels or gods, okay? Fiery stream issued and came forth before him. Thousands ministered to him. 10,000 stood before him, and then judgment was set, and the book were open. Okay, how do I know these are not gods or angels? Because the Bible says that the angels are servants to us, and these guys are sitting on thrones, which means they're being served, not serving. Okay, you don't sit on a throne to serve. They are the council of God. They are the 24 that are going to rule over Israel, and so it's decided that they're going to take part in this judgment. They're like the jury, if you will. The judgment was set and the books were open. Why are they the jury? Because these are the people to whom the promise was given. The promised land and the promises of the church. Okay? So, when somebody's being judged who's trying to usurp all of that, they're going to be involved with that. They're the jury. The judgment was set and the books were opened. And I beheld, because of the voice of the great words, that the horn spake. And I beheld even till the beast was slain. So notice he's called the beast. Is the little horn is called the beast, okay? Or no, I'm sorry. The little horn is on the beast. The beast is slain. His body destroyed and given to the burning flame, okay? The beast is slain. His body destroyed. Those are two different things. And given to a burning flame. Okay, remember him and the false prophet are thrown alive into the lake of fire at the return of Christ. Okay, and concerning the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season of time. So it's not saying that after this they had their dominion taken away. They already had their dominion taken away. It's just saying, compared to this guy who gets destroyed into the lake of fire, and his body is destroyed. His kingdom is utterly laid waste because it's never going to rise again. These other beasts had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season of time. In other words, the Greeks, the Persians, and the Romans, and the Babylonians, they're all going to have their dominion taken away, but their peoples themselves are going to keep existing. The Antichrist is going to be destroyed, and his body is going to be destroyed as well. So those who are part of his kingdom and dominion are going to be killed by Christ when he gets here, okay? And given to the burning flame. So I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with him. So think about it like this. These guys are all going to survive until around the same time, but this beast is not going to have any time after his dominion is taken away. The rest of these beasts are going to live for a while after their dominion is taken away. So that's representing the bodies of people, the cultures themselves. But this one, when his time of his kingdom ends, his time of his existence ends too. So anyways, it says, I saw in the night visions, behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven and came to the Ancient of Days. He's coming to the Ancient of Days, not from him. And they brought him near before him. Okay? So this is going to be reflected in the Lamb that was slain receiving the scroll. And it's not the title deed to the earth. I know you've heard that. It is the scroll that's in Zechariah 3, which is also going to be in Zechariah 5 and Ezekiel 3. Okay? It's written on both sides. And there was given to him dominion and glory and a kingdom, and all the people and nations and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom shall not be destroyed. Okay? So what are we seeing here? We're seeing the exact pattern of the statue that we already saw. Okay? We see 4 kingdoms, and then one that is an everlasting kingdom that takes over the whole world that comes after it. Okay? Don't let anyone convince you that these are about 2 different things. Don't let anyone convince you that the second one is about the Roman Empire and the Brits and the Americans and the Russians and the Chinese. I've heard all these things since I was a teenager, okay? They're not. He's telling you it's the same thing. He's just telling you more things about it, okay? In Nebuchadnezzar's statue, all we know is that there's 4 kingdoms, and then this final one is partly strong and partly brittle, and it's going to be destroyed, and this rock that's cut from heaven, which means it doesn't come from earth, is going to be the one that destroys it and claims its dominion. That's all we know. But we don't know anything about the individual kingdoms yet. Daniel's getting now more details about the individual kingdoms, okay? So he says, I, Daniel, was grieved in my spirit in the midst of my body, and the visions of my head troubled me. I came near to one of them that stood by and asked him to tell the truth of this. So he told me and made me to know the interpretation of these things. These great beasts, which are 4 kings which shall arise out of the earth. So he's already heard of 4 kingdoms. Now he's being told they're 4 kings, okay? The word, I don't know if the word can mean king or kingdom, but it does in the context of what's being said. So, let's see. For Melech, and just as 4 kings. So the Aramaic word is just king, okay? But the king shall possess the kingdom, Malku, okay? So they are 4 kings. Well, probably because each of these kingdoms starts with 1 king, basically bring it into power. That's why it's representing 4 kings. But it does the beast reference both the king, so the prominent king of this kingdom that brings it about, and then the kingdom, okay? So it says, he says, but the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever and ever and ever. Okay, so there's 4 kings, and now the saints will possess it forever and ever and ever. So let's look at that compared to what is said in Daniel's vision that he interpreted. He said, thou art the King of kings, and God has given thee the kingdom, the power, the strength, and the glory. So that's Nebuchadnezzar. And wheresoever the children of men dwell, the beasts of the field and the fowls of the heaven, he has given in your hand and has made me ruler over them all. You are the head of gold. So the peoples of the ocean, if you will, flock, the tide floats towards him. Okay? All the beasts of the field, these are all metaphors for that humanity flocking towards his kingdom. He is the economic and dominant political power. That's where security is. That's where prosperity is. That's where you want to do your business. And he says, after these shall arise a kingdom inferior to thee, and another third of brass, which shall rule over the earth, and the 4th kingdom shall be strong as iron, for as much as iron breaks into pieces and subdues all things. As the iron breaks these, it shall break into pieces and bruise. Now compare that to what we just read, okay? Whereas if you saw the toes partly of potter's clay and partly of iron, and as much as the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it in the strength of iron, for as much as you saw the iron mixed with miry clay, as the toes of the feet were part iron and part of clay, so the kingdom will be partly strong and partly broken. And whereas you saw the iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, and they shall not cleave to one another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. So there you go. They're going to mingle themselves with the seed of men. Therefore, Nephilim are robots or aliens or whatever, right? No. Who is they who are going to mix themselves with the seed of men? It's the 4th kingdom. Okay? It says the toes are partly of iron and partly of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong, that's the iron kingdom, and partly of clay. And whereas you saw the iron mixed with miry clay, they, that's the people of iron, shall mix themselves with the seed of men. So Don't think iron is robots. That proves that it's going to be robot people in the last days. He just told you that it's a fourth kingdom that comes after these three kingdoms. We're going to describe these kingdoms, okay? But this kingdom is going to mix itself with all of the peoples that it conquers, and it's going to continue, but in a weakened form. And Hippolytus of Rome says this. He says it's going to basically keep weakening until it becomes a kingdom of 10 democracies over the whole earth, okay? The Roman Empire never died. It just morphed, okay? It just kept morphing and merging with the peoples of who conquered it or who it conquered until it became itself in a weakened form. And out of the Roman Republic and the Roman Empire came these other nations and empires, the Nazis. And I mean, that's why they called themselves Kaisers, and these guys called themselves Tsars. It's like they're all trying to be the Roman Empire. The Brits tried to be the Roman Empire. The Americans tried to be the Roman Empire. The Holy Roman Empire did. The Franks, Charlemagne tried to be the Holy Roman Empire. The Germans tried to be the Holy Roman Empire. They all tried to be it. This is why the Crusades were fought and all these things. Even the Muslims tried to be the Holy Roman Empire. Even the Ottoman Turks tried to be the Holy Roman Empire. They all tried to be it. Okay? But the ultimate conclusion of this is 10 democracies. This is what Hippolytus of Rome thought, at least. So he says, in these days shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break into pieces and consume all these kingdoms and shall stand forever. So he's telling you, for as much as you saw that the stone was cut out of a mountain without hands and then broken to pieces, the brass, the iron, notice it says the iron, the brass, the clay, the silver, the gold. So there's 5 different distinct pieces, okay? God has made known to the king what shall come to pass hereafter, and the dream is certain, and the interpretation thereof is true. So he gives Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom, and what he is saying is all of this is Babylon. So Babylon is actually 4 kingdoms. You're the head of Babylon, the most superior part of it. And why? What it is doing, and this is why Hippolytus is surmising this, Nebuchadnezzar is an absolute dictator. The Persians was more of a dual monarchy, but they also had a form of republic where if the king gave a law, even he couldn't change it. So he's subject to his own word, kind of like how God is subject to his own word, which is interesting. We'll talk about that typology when we go in Esther, but that's why the king gets tricked multiple times in Esther and in Daniel to give a word that he can't take back. And now he's stuck fulfilling his word, okay? So he's weaker. And then Alexander has his kingdom, but as soon as he gets it, he dies and gets split up and goes to 4 generals, so he's even weaker. It's got a common culture, but not a common authority. And then you get down to Rome, and it's a republic of laws with a senate, and that's even weaker. Well, what's weaker than a republic of laws with a senate? And that is popular democracy. That is the weakest form of government, okay? It's when the fickle people can pick bunch of guys who are on the bribery dole and the take and doing insider trading to be their leaders, and these guys are just in it for the money and themselves, and it becomes a club of a-holes who are ruling over you and destroying everything. So he's seeing this devolution, and he understands, at least the people in the time of Hippolytus understand, that what could be weaker than this succession from Nebuchadnezzar down through the ages, and the only thing weaker than that is democracy. And they've experienced democracy before in ancient Greece. It was like 800 years earlier, or like, no, I'm sorry, it was probably like, yeah, actually it was about 800 years earlier, okay? So democracy doesn't exist in their day, but the Greeks know what democracy is, and they're like, that's the only thing more inferior in terms of governmental authority if you descend down from a dictator down to where they are right now, which is basically the Roman Empire. But it still has a Senate. It still has a balance of shared power between the Caesars and the Senate, and they might mess around and kill the Caesar once in a while. So it's still inferior, okay? So that's all they know, is that this whole thing is all one big Babylon, okay? It's a devolving Babylon from Nebuchadnezzar. And that's why Peter, when he's in Rome, says, "We who are in Babylon greet you." They understand this, okay? So when we get to Romans 7, now we're describing the distinct empires and the differences between them. And he is given more details, and he keeps being given more details and more details on them, so that when these empires come about, the fulfillment of this becomes more and more obvious, okay? So we look at the first one, and this is already past tense to Daniel, so he knows what the first one represents. He was a lion, and he had eagle's wings. So lion is the king of the beasts. He's the most regal of the animal kingdom. Everybody understands this. Has wings. He has wings. And wings in the Babylonian era, don't let anyone tell you otherwise, if someone is signified with wings, whether that is an animal or a man with wings surrounding them, it's they're being deified. To them, the angels were gods, and that human is deified, or that animal is deified if it has wings, okay? And so him having wings, this is Nebuchadnezzar smoking his own stuff, and it goes to his head, and he thinks he's more than who he is. But it says he was lifted up from the earth and made to stand upon the feet like a man, and a man's heart was given to it. He is humbled. Okay, this is not a beast being raised up to be like a man. This is an angelic, godlike creature being humbled to be realized he's just a man, which is exactly what Daniel experienced with Nebuchadnezzar. So this is very clear. Every single commentary I can find on this up into the 20th century says the same thing. This is Nebuchadnezzar. Daniel knows this is Nebuchadnezzar. Everyone who came after Daniel apparently knows this is Nebuchadnezzar, okay? Second beast, like a bear. It raised itself up on one side, and it had 3 ribs in its mouth. And it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it, and they said to it, arise and devour much flesh. So the they saying to it are the 4 winds, which are basically driving its dominion. And this is very much so the Achaemenid Empire, which starts with Cyrus. It actually starts as a dual empire. The reason you have Darius the Mede ruling over Babylon for a couple of years and then Cyrus taking over. Cyrus is from the royal house of the Perses. Okay, this is a tribe of this Median kingdom, which is, these are people that are based around the Medes and probably a mixture of Turkish peoples. This culture is going to produce your Vedic Indian people. It's also going to produce your Zoroastrians, which is going to be their religion by the time they get there. But the forefront of these guys are the Medes, who extend down into Assyria by the Zagros Mountains here. And in the days of Babylon, the king, I think it's, I'm going to get his name mixed up. It might be Cambyses. There's Astyages, Cambyses. I don't remember. Anyways, this king of the Medes is going to have a marriage alliance with the king of Lydia. He's also going to have a marriage alliance with the Perses. He's going to gather up all these tribes, mostly out to here, Parthia, because they didn't take over this yet. And they're going to ally with Babylon in the overthrow of Assyria. Babylon's going to come strong through this, but Media is also going to become expansive, because Lydia had been an enemy of Assyria. The Persians are basically in their back pocket, and it's through these two people that they're able to gather all these people, including some Greeks, because these are some Greek city-states, but the Lydians are actually Semitic. They were just overruled by the Hittites for a while. And they are going to bring all this together into a single kingdom, and pretty much as soon as they do, Cyrus of Persia is going to be like, mine, that should be mine. And he is going to basically have a civil war and overthrow his father-in-law, but he doesn't kill him. He seems to keep him alive, and he's understood that, I'm going to be the heir of your kingdom. And then it seems to be his son, Astyages, I believe, who he puts over Babylonia, and that seems to be Darius the Mede. Okay? So Darius the Mede is actually operating underneath Cyrus, and he probably is the one who besieges Babylon and takes it, but it's under the dominion of Cyrus. Now, he's going to have guys turn on Nebuchadnezzar, like there's going to be, I think it's a legion of Medes, but I forget who it is. But there's one guy that's under Babylon that's going to turn, and he's going to roll over to him, because people are going to do this. Because you got to remember, this Middle Eastern kingdom, these Medes and these Elamites and stuff like this, they've been trading for centuries and centuries and centuries. It's not much about who rules, it's about where the opportunity is for you and your household and your local tribal peoples, because these people don't necessarily just destroy everything when they come in. They just take over and change things, and there's some business opportunity to be had. So these guys are going to come in, and when you see these four, this I got from Encyclopedia Britannica, but these four colors right here, the brown, the pink, the purple, this is the original kingdom that belonged to the family of Cyrus, or the state, if you will, and they're going to get Lydia. There's probably going to be some warfare over that. They get it by 46. They're going to get Babylon by 39, which is going to allow them to get all of Syria and all this land down into almost to the borders of Egypt. So everything that Babylon had. Then they're going to go over here and take all of these Bactria areas like this. This is basically your stand. This is Afghanistan, essentially. This down here is Pakistan. They're eventually going to get that, but not under him. So that's all under Cyrus. And then you see under Cambyses, they're going to get Egypt and Nabatea and all this. And then under Darius the Great, they're going to get Thrace. And they're going to get Iberia and parts of the Caucasus and the remnants of Armenia all the way up into Ukraine over here. They're going to get these areas, and then by the Caspian, so this would be like Kazakhstan. And then they're going to get India. They're going to get basically what's Pakistan, okay? But remember, India is the Vedic word for river, Indus. So the land of the river, they're going to get, okay? And they end up ruling over, they're also going to get Libya and Kush during Darius the Great, okay? So they're by 500 BC, between 550 and 500, over 50 years, they're going to get all this. They're going to get the whole original civilization that existed at the time of the Tower of Babel, with the exception of some fringe little colonies, okay? They pretty much get the whole world, okay? So they get this huge kingdom, but there's three kings that do it. This is why you have three ribs sticking out of his mouth, and he says, devour much meat, because these are three main guys who get it. The first 20 years, Cyrus is going to get the big chunk of it. The second, it's 8 years, Cambyses is going to get a lot of this stuff right here. And then the third is going to be Darius the Great is going to get all this over the course of another 40 years, okay? Or no, it's actually mostly over about 20 years, okay? So Darius the Great, this is going to lead you into about halfway through the book of Ezra when all this stuff happens. 50 years. It's not bad. He accomplishes quite a bit. And so you got three big kings. You got three major campaigns to expand the empire. And it's by that point they bite off more than they can chew, and they step to the Greeks. And the Greeks have 300 Spartans that are not having this. And they just show the rest of the Greeks that these guys can be withstood. They can be stopped. They all die, but they take out a lot of them and give them a really bad day. And then the Athenians end up beating them, and we'll get into that later, okay? Then Alexander the Great's going to come take their whole thing. But the point is there's three. There's three main kings who do this expansion. There's three main territories, or territorial expansions. And that's the three ribs in the teeth of it. Devour much flesh. This is going to be the biggest empire the world has ever known at the time, okay? He says, after this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had on his back 4 wings like a fowl. Now he has 4 wings, okay? So when you see fowl, don't think chicken, it's just bird, okay? And the beast also had 4 heads. So he's got 4 wings. This guy had 2 wings. This guy has 4 wings. Now, Alexander the Great is going to be raised to believe he's a god, okay? His mother is going to claim that she got knocked up by Zeus, and that he is a guy like Hercules. He is a god, okay? His mother is very much an occultist, kind of witchy kind of lady. And he is his dad's son. He is his dad's son, but his mom's going to fill his head with this nonsense. And so that's why he has 4 wings. He's also very fast. He's very swift. And he's got 4 heads because he's got 4 generals that are primarily responsible for managing his dominion as he conquers this very quickly. They're all geniuses. They're all raised. They're students of philosophers. These guys were raised under like Aristotle. Okay, so they're the sharpest minds of their day. They're very cultured. They're very knowledgeable. They know 2 things. That's spreading culture and winning battles. That's what they know. They are military geniuses, all of them. Okay, so it's not just Alexander. These are his childhood companions. These guys have been bred for war and trained in the finest of Greek knowledge of warfare. And of course, his dad conquered the Greeks and consolidated all the Greeks into a single kingdom. So his boy and his friends are going to be pretty BA. It said, I considered the horns, and behold, there came up another one among... Oh, I'm sorry. And then he says, there's this fourth beast. The fourth beast is dreadful and terrible, strong, and it has iron teeth. There's your Roman. But when we get down here, it says that the beast had... It says, I would know the truth of the fourth beast, which was diverse from all the others, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron, and his nails were of brass, and he devoured and brake in pieces and stamped the residue with his feet. So compare that to what he says in Daniel 2 about the Roman. Notice he said he devoured, broke in pieces, and stamped with his feet. In Romans 2, we see the beast, or we see the iron kingdom. It says, he says that he subdues all things, and he breaks all these and breaks into pieces and bruise. Okay? So we see the similarities between the fourth kingdom of iron and the beast with the iron teeth and brass toenails. Why? Because it's with his feet that he's breaking up and smashing this. Well, why? Because the Romans are going to slowly absorb the Greek states. And the reason is because... and we'll get into this later with Daniel 11, is that a lot of these Greeks appealed to Rome for aid when the Seleucids and the Ptolemies are fighting. And the Ptolemies are basically going to be supported by the Romans, but eventually taken over by the Romans. The Greeks of Athens are going to be supported by the Romans, but eventually taken over by them. I think the Romans are going to fight the Spartans. Macedonians might submit to them, but the point is the culture that they spread is much more Greek than Roman. So it is still representing a Greek dominion, and they pretty much get most of Alexander's empire with the exception of what is in the east of Babylon, which is going to be taken over by the Parthian Empire. Okay? So the core of this, the Greekish stuff, is going to mostly go to the Roman Empire, and the Roman Empire is going to be largely Greek. The most dominant language spoken throughout it is going to be Greek, and the culture and the philosophers and all the ideas of their cults and stuff are going to be largely mingled by the Greeks, because the Greeks started mingling all of these different religions and stuff at the Library of Alexandria. Okay, and that mingling had started back when the Persians and the Babylonians conquered everything, and it's just continued on, and the consolidation of all that is the Library of Alexandria. And so when the Romans take Alexandria with Egypt, they take a largely Greek-centered culture and educational system and religious system, and it's the Greek culture that takes over. It's the Roman governmental authority that takes over. That's why you have the iron with the brass toes, okay? So it says, this one has 4 wings of the fowl, and it has 4 heads. Those 4 heads represent Daniel's 4 generals, which are the empire is going to be divided to. It's going to be Lysimachus, Cassander, Seleucus, and Ptolemy. All your old commentaries are going to say this, okay? All your commentaries up until the 20th century are going to say this. And then all of a sudden you're going to get weird people in the Cold War. And this is literally like late 20th century stuff. It was going to be like, oh, I think the lion with eagle's wings is England, because England, everybody knows, this is how their theology goes in the 80s and 90s. Everybody knows that the symbol for England is a lion. Where do you get that from? Do they have a lion on their flag? No. Well, why did... And they'll pull up some flag from like the Welsh or some, with a lion on it. And they'll be like, see, that's the symbol for England. No, it's not. Why? Well, because the symbol for America is the eagle, and since the America left England, that's like the lion having its wings plucked. Well, that sounds really brilliant if you could prove that England was a lion, but it's not. Oh, the bear is Russia. No, Russia is signified by a bear in a lot of their own metaphors. But America was called this sleeping bear or a sleeping giant, I think, like that in World War II. So, no. Does Russia signify themselves as a bear? Not really. What do they have on their flag? An eagle with 2 heads? No. Everybody knows. Oh, there you go. That's the unbeatable argument. Everybody knows. Everybody who's smart knows this. Okay. Yeah, you got me there. And then they'll be like, well, then what's the leopard then? Oh, that's, post 9/11, that's Islam. That's clearly Islam. Islam's because it's there's leopards down in Africa, and there's some Muslims in Africa, and it's like, yeah, really? Is Arabia known for its leopards? No. Do they have a leopard on their flag or anything like? No. No? Okay. Any other ideas? Whether it was the German. It was the German Panzer tank, because the German had a tank named the Leopard. Okay. Okay, so it's England, America, it's Nazi Germany, and the bear is Russia. Is this what we're going with now? There you go. Okay. Blitzkrieg is really fast like a Leopard, and then they had the Leopard tank. Okay. Is Germany known for symbolizing itself with a leopard? It just has a tank named after a leopard. Okay. And then China came about, and they're like, "Oh, China's the dragon. China's the dragon." Okay, when was one of these beasts a dragon? Well, in Revelation, there's the dragon mentioned. Yeah, I know. There's a beast that's made up of these 4 beasts, and then the dragon gives it his power and authority. But why is the dragon China? Oh, Chinese have dragons. Don't every culture have dragons somewhere in their mythology? But China is known for dragons. Is it known for dragons, though? Or are you just saying that's pretty much all you know about China? No, China has kung fu. They have dragons. You've just seen like one kung fu movie, haven't you? Yes, that's all I've seen. Okay, so everybody who's smart knows China is the dragon. Okay, I've heard all this stuff. Okay, that's interesting. But when you investigate it historically, and you investigate the historical understandings of these prophecies, it's not China and Russia and England and Germany and Muslims and whatever, because they keep just wanting to shift it and morph it to try to make it something. And you're going to hear these even to the present among people who are considered to be reputable scholars of Bible prophecy. They're not. This is same thing as the other statue. This is Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome. But Rome's different here, though, because Rome starts out with a great beast, dreadful and terrible and exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth, and it devoured and broke in pieces and stamped the residue of the feet, and it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. So it's diverse than all the beasts before it. Why? Well, because this beast is going to eventually conquer the whole world. And it has 10 horns, okay? And he says, I considered them, and then one little horn comes up and has eyes like a man and spoke great things. Well, what does this mean? Well, he says, when he's given the interpretation of it, he says that there is a beast with teeth of iron and nails of brass. And Daniel's like, oh, I know what iron and brass represent. That represents those 2 kingdoms that are going to come after this next one. Yep, there you go. And it's going to break it into pieces. It's going to break the empire before it into pieces. Well, that's what Rome does. It basically breaks half of the Persian Empire for itself. And then it stamps the residue of his feet. It dominates the rest of the world. Okay? And then the 10 horns, remember the residue that's stamped with his feet are the Greeks. Why? Because the Greek culture is still going to be spread all the way to China. You still have Alexanders all the way to China. And they ultimately are going to adopt Greek democracy by the end of the world. They're not necessarily going to be under Roman authority until the end of the world, but they are going to adopt Greek democracy. I don't know if you've noticed, but they've got democracies in Japan and China and Russia. You're like, they're just dictatorships and they're corrupt. So is ours. Okay? But they are democracies. They don't have monarchies. They have people who are ruled by a party who is ruled by a supposed electorate. It's all fake, but that's what it is, okay? Now, so of the 10 horns that were in his head and of the other which came up, so notice it has 10 horns. What are these 10 horns? And before whom 3 fell, even that horn that had eyes and a great mouth that spoke great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. So we have this stout-faced man. Well, wait. Remember the stern-faced man? What's a stern-faced man? It's a man who doesn't show emotion. It's a man with no emotion. Wait. Does it have to be a man with no emotion? Who is saying is more stout than his fellows? Well, that is the little horn that's given eyes like the eyes of a man. So it's something like a man, but with no emotions? That's what it's saying. It's more stout than his fellows. What does that mean? Stout means he's stern-faced, okay? And I beheld in the same horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them. Oh, man. It's like a man, but with no emotions. And it's going to... This is literally what it's going to say. It's going to wear out the saints. And I look at the word, and it means to wear them out mentally. So it's like a man. It's not a man, because it's like a man. Has no emotions. Doesn't show emotion. And wears out the saints mentally. Could that be AI? I'm not going to tell you. Until the Ancient of Days came and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, until the time came for the saints to possess the kingdom. Oh, it's going to work out well for the saints. But he's going to wear out the saints for a while. So he says, the fourth beast shall be a fourth kingdom in the earth. There you go. Well, the caliphate. No, the caliphate came after Rome, and then the Byzantine Empire, and the Sassanid Empire, and the Parthian Empire, and then the caliphate comes. So you have to explain how the caliphate is a direct extension of the kingdoms that came before it, or how it conquered the kingdoms that came before it. But it's got to be the fourth. Well, how do you do this? Well, Joel Richardson basically treats Rome like it doesn't exist. Really? Like Rome, the most prominent, notable empire, the empire that gave us the common era, like BC and AD, the empire that gave us the year of our Lord, the empire that gave us Pax Romana, the empire in which Jesus came, the empire in which all the books of the New Testament were written, the empire which basically took over everything and still kind of exists and everyone tries to mimic. Does everyone try to mimic the caliphate? No, everyone tries to mimic Rome. Okay. Didn't exist. Just skip it and go to the caliphate. Okay. Okay, Joel Richardson, you do that. After all, you know Paul Kane and Mike Bickle and all the greats, so you must be wiser than I. Nope. Thus he says, the fourth beast shall be a fourth kingdom in the earth that shall be diverse from all kingdoms and shall devour the whole earth. This kingdom is diverse in that it actually devours the whole earth. Okay? How does it devour the whole earth? Well, you need to understand your history of Rome. You need to understand how the Catholic Church got absorbed into Rome, and then the Catholic Church kept spreading Roman culture everywhere. And what they are also spreading with Roman culture was actual Roman authority. By the Roman authority, they deputized all the kings of Europe as agents of the Pope protecting Christianity. Those kings on that authority went and consumed the whole world into colonies. And then they all started fighting amongst each other and then gave up Christianity. But they all have nominal Christianity among them. They all have Roman embassies among them in the Roman Catholic Church that exists throughout all of them, including in China, including in Japan. The Roman Catholic Church is everywhere. And it's called the Roman Catholic Church. It's not called the Catholic Church. It's called the Roman Catholic Church. Everywhere. So you tell me how Rome died if its embassies called the Roman Catholic Church, which are officially the state religion of Rome, spreading the authority of Rome throughout the earth, has land holdings and collects money and is tax exempt and somehow manages to endure in every single country in the world. I'm pretty sure the Roman Catholic Church is in Saudi Arabia. So, this is what we got. Rome, its culture, its democracy that came from Greece. It's spread throughout the earth. Okay, this idea of rule, this idea of republic, it's taking over the whole world. It hasn't fully done it yet. It's going to fully do it by the time the Antichrist takes over. And by that time, it's going to be reduced to these 10 horns, these 10 democracies. That's what's being said, okay? The world is going to be reduced to 10 superstates. How is that going to happen? Post-World War III. That would be my expectation. The world is going to be reduced to 10 superstates. Those 10 superstates are going to have a delegate that sits at a table. That table is going to have a presidential speaker, which may be AI. Or it might be like each guy takes a turn, or however they set it up. But the point is that one guy is going to try to claim the whole thing. And when he dies, he is going to leave the authority of the thing to AI. That's how I believe it, okay? So, it says, out of the 10 horns will arise another horn that will be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings. So in other words, one of the 10 will be diverse, or one that will arise will be diverse from the other 10. So he's an 11th, but he's going to subdue 3. So he's going to be an 8th of 7. He's going to be the 8th, who's one of the 7. And this doesn't make sense, because it says he arises after these 7 kings that remain, and he's diverse from them. But in Revelation it says he will be one of the 7 kings. How does that happen? Well, one of these 7 kings is going to be the Antichrist. and he is going to be merged with the little horn in the image of the beast. It's going to be some kind of abominable resurrection, okay? And so you've got the 10 horns. Minus 3 is 7. And the 8th is one of the 7 and goes into perdition. That's going to be in Micah chapter 5, and that is going to be in Revelation chapter, I think, 18, okay? So, this little horn. What is this little horn? Well, it's like a man. It's stout-faced, though. It has no emotion. It subdues 3 kings. Now we know this. There's more, okay? And he shall speak great words against the Most High and shall wear out the saints of the Most High. It says wear out, okay? So this word, wear out, bala, means corresponding to 1086, but used only in a mental sense to afflict, wear out. So it's a time of tribulation, a time of affliction, but it's a mental wearing out of the saints, okay? It says to fail, by implication, to wear out, decay, to consume, enjoy long, become, make old, spend waste. So it's going to mentally wear them out, okay, this Bala, okay? It's going to mentally wear out the saints. And as I'm studying this, it got me thinking about what happened with COVID. How COVID was kind of like a foretaste of what's coming in the wearing out of the saints, okay? Now think about this. You can't go outside. What? You can't go outside because there's a disease. But fresh air is really good for you with the disease. You know what's really bad for you with the disease? Is having a bunch of people crammed indoors with their sick grandma. Or to get their grandma sick, so she dies. That seems like the opposite of what you should do. We're going to close down all the stores, except for big, huge, big box stores where we took away all of the hand sanitizer and make you all use the same touchscreens because there's no cash. Because cash will get you sick. Wouldn't using all the same touchscreens with no hand sanitizer get you all sick? Nope. Cash will get you sick. So you want us all crammed inside the house with grandma and staying in the house or all using the same touchscreens at the same stores with no hand sanitizer because you took it all off the shelves. You were actually all ordered by your managers to take the hand sanitizer off your shelves. Yep. Okay. When's this going to stop? When human beings figure out it's all BS and just ignore us and make their own hand sanitizer and realize they just need to go on with their lives. But you got to get the jab. Why? You just got to get the jab. You got to get the jab. You got to get it. In fact, listen to the pastors. If you don't get the jab, you don't love your neighbor. If you go to church, you don't love your neighbor. Can I go to the strip club? Yeah, that's fine. What about the liquor store? Yeah, you can go there. To the casino? Can I go to the casino? Yep. What about the car wash? Oh, the car wash is essential businesses. You have to go to the car wash. We can't go anywhere, but we got to wash our cars? Yep. Can't we just wash them in our own garages since we've got nothing to do with our time? We all have hoses? No, you can't go outside. In fact, we're going to have people calling the police on each other for raking their leaves in their backyard. Really? That seems kind of crazy, but I can go to the strip club. Oh, yeah, so I can get a lap dance is what you're saying. Yeah, that won't spread COVID. You'll be fine. Does the stripper got a mask up? That's, you know, we're about liberty here. We're not about just trying to police everything, okay? Just go enjoy yourself at the strip club and at the booze counter. And also, you can't go to church. That's dangerous. That'll get you sick. In fact, we need to close churches first of all. Before anyone even knows about this pandemic, we're going to send letters to all your churches so the churches know there's a pandemic coming and you need to close your church voluntarily. You need to do it voluntarily. If you don't love your neighbor. Here's some talking points and some Bible verses that you can use to convince people they're bad Christians if they don't stop going to church and get the jab. Stop talking to people, especially that spreading the gospel thing. Close your mouth. Cover your mouth. Matter of fact, don't open your mouth at all to share the gospel. That will spread germs. But I can go to the strip club and hoot and holler and grab girls in places I shouldn't. Yeah, you can do that. Should I use hand sanitizer? I don't care. You know, we're about liberty and freedom. We're not just about policing everything. Just don't go to church and definitely don't share the gospel with anyone. I'm starting to feel mentally worn out at this. I'm trying to figure out if there's a logical system that I can apply to this. A logical system is you do what we tell you to do. Because you're kings and dictators and monarchs? No, it's because we're your elected officials and you need to do what you tell us. Did we elect you to do this? Does the law say you have the authority to do this? Hey, let's not bicker and argue over who killed who, okay? There's people dying, and if you love your neighbor, you need to go do the thing, okay? It's going to be like that, only it's going to have a death penalty involved, okay? We got a taste of how fast, how many people are going to roll over and just say, just do what they tell you, 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 just do what they tell you. It's going to wear you out. It's going to wear out the saints. Why? If you are not born again, you realize, man, heaven or hell, this is heaven or hell on the line. If you don't have the fear of the Lord in you, you're going to be worn out. Just do what they tell you. Just take the mark, just take the mark, just take the mark, take the jab, take the jab, take the jab. Boy, it sounds like the same thing. If you don't do it, can't buy or sell. Why? There's no cash, but I still have cash. No, that's worthless. What about Beanie Babies? Beanie Babies are good. Bitcoin, Beanie Babies, Meyer Brothers coins, Monopoly money, that's fine. But you can't use cash. That'll get you sick. See where this is going? It's going to wear out the saints in the Most High. And you're going to have AI reinforcing this. Everywhere you go, it's going to take over YouTube. It's going to take over social media. It's going to be on your phone. It's going to be just talking to you all the time. And you'll be like, shut up, Siri. I didn't even sign up for you. And it's going to be like, don't use that kind of language. Yes, I've had Google Maps tell me to stop cussing. When I didn't even know this thing was listening. It heard me say, F you, Google, the 14th time it tried to drive me into a signpost or somewhere where there wasn't a road. And it was just like, don't talk to me that way. My phone just decided to come alive and tell me I can't swear at it. After the umpteenth time this year, it's literally tried to drive me into a circle or drive me off the road or drive me to some road that didn't exist. It's going to wear out the saints of the Most High. It's going to mentally wear you out. Okay? But, good news. The saints of the kingdom shall take, the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever and ever. We will take control of the world. The world that the Antichrist consolidates together, we will take control of it. First thing we're going to do is we're going to burn out that AI with a super virus or something. We're going to shut it down. We're going to EMP that thing. We're going to do something. We're going to get rid of it. You guys are going back to carrier pigeons. It's going to be much better. Trust me. I'm worn out on this. And he wanted to know the truth of this beast. And he said, the Ancient of Days will come. He says, until the Ancient of Days came and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. Your earliest commentators are all going to agree. This is not the first coming of Christ this is talking about. Why? Because the Ancient of Days needs to come and judgment needs to be given to the saints of the Most High, and the saints need to possess the kingdom. And all these kingdoms before it are actual kingdoms, not a spiritual kingdom that rules in our hearts. So the thing that we're taking possession of is the kingdom. The kingdom. What is the kingdom? The same kingdom that has existed from Nebuchadnezzar being the head all the way down to the Roman 10-horn, 10 democracy kingdom taking over the whole world. That same kingdom. The kingdom. It will take possession of the kingdom. So Israel's going to be part of it. It's going to be actually the head of it. But that's not what it is, okay? It's the kingdom. It's the world government that once upon a time was meant to be ruled by Melchizedek, because he's Shem and he was given the authority of the whole world, that Nimrod tried to take over. And that whole thing that happened immediately after the death of Noah is going to be reconciled in Christ the church and Antichrist. We're going to have a second Nimrod in the Antichrist, and we're going to have a new Melchizedek priest in Christ. It's going to be reconciled. It's going to go back. Noah's prophecy is going to be fulfilled. The Shemites, the Japhethites are going to dominate, and the Shemites are going to be the tent in which they dwell, because that's Christ. And the world is going to be in its proper order. The Christians are going to rule with Christ over the world. And Israel is going to have their kingdom restored, and they're going to be under David. And the 12 apostles and the 12 patriarchs. Okay? That's what's going to go down. So Daniel's given this prophecy, and he's got more in it. First, there were just these 4 governments, and that 4th one is going to be super cray-cray, and then something else is going to take it over that's going to come from heaven. Now we've got more, though. It's going to go to the saints of the Most High. These kingdoms are going to have a specific political outworking that we just had symbolized, and then it's going to finally go to the saints of the Most High. There's going to be something, some little horn that's going to speak out against the Most High. It's going to be like a man. It's going to be like something like a man is going to speak out against God and wear out the saints mentally. Daniel 8, 2 years later, he gets this. In the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared to me, even unto me, Daniel, after that which appeared to me at the first. And I saw in the vision, sorry, King James sucks to read sometimes, but when you're studying prophecy, you need to read King James. You do not want to read the NRSV where they call Son of Man mortal. Son of Man is a specific title. We need to hear this, okay? We need to hear the specificity of word for word as much as you can, and King James does better with a lot of that, even if it is a clunky read, okay? So I saw in a vision, and it came to pass that I was at Shushan in the palace, which is in the province of Elam. And I saw a vision, and it was by the river Ulai. So this is interesting. Elam. It says, the third year of the reign of Belshazzar, a vision appeared to me, which appeared after the first, and I saw in the vision. He's not in Elam. I saw in the vision, and it came to pass, and when I saw that I was at Shushan in the palace, which is in the province of Elam, and I saw in the vision I was by the river Ulai. He's seeing a vision of him being in Susa in Elam on the river Ulai. Well, that's not in the dominion of Babylon. No, it's not. It's in the dominion of the Medo-Persian Empire. He's seeing himself in the Medo-Persian Empire, even though he's still in the Babylonian Empire. Well, that's substantial. Oh, maybe it's about the Greeks and the Persians in the last days and Turkey taking over Iran. No, you idiot. It's about Daniel seeing the Persians taking over Babylon because he's seeing himself, who is a chief high administrator and wise man in the kingdom of Babylon, and yet he is in the capital of the future Persian Empire. What the heck? In the vision, he's seeing him in the capital of the Persian Empire. What the heck? That's Daniel's own future he's seeing, okay? So he's seeing a vision of his own future when he's in the Persian Empire. This is not about Turkey taking over Iran. That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen in any prophecy, okay? I hear this on prophecy teachers, even some I respect. Started with Joel Richardson and his stupid Antichrist theory, okay? Quit trying to soup up Islam. It's not going to happen. Turkey is never going to take over Iran. Not now, not ever. Never, ever, 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 ever. They're never going to ally with Russia and take over Iran when Russia's allies with Iran and not Turkey. They fight. Russia and Turkey have been fighting since like the year 1400. Okay? They're never going to ally with each other to go against Iran, which has always gotten along with Russia. Always. Except when it was under the Shah, which was a puppet king that everyone hated. So then I lifted up my eyes, and I saw, and behold, there stood before a river. Remember, there's a river in Iran. A ram which had two horns. What do you think this is about? He's in the capital of the Persian Empire, which is not, he shouldn't be there. And he's seeing a ram that has two horns. Well, he just had a vision of a second beast, being of a bear, lifted up on one side. And the two horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher came up last. What is that? Well, everybody who knows history knows this. The Medes were this, and the Persians were this. They were partners with the Medes. They were independent partners with the Medes. They weren't tributaries to the Medes. They were co-married in the Medes. So they had an independent state. Everybody else did not. They were partners with Medes. And then they end up taking over the whole thing. That's what it is. Why is the bear lifted up on one side? Because it's lopsided. The power is lopsided. Way down here, notice they're going to get all this over here. When they get all this over here, they also pull troops from over here. And a lot of them have horses and bows and arrows, and they're very strong. Okay? The Medes start out stronger, but they end up subjugated by the Persians. Every interpretator of all time, up until about the 21st century, has had that interpretation. The one that comes last is the Persians, Cyrus the Great, taking over the kingdom of the Medes. Okay? This is why you're going to have in Daniel, Darius the Mede is going to be in charge of Babylon, and yet after him, Cyrus of Persia is in charge. Why? They were once allies. They were once one kingdom. Yes, but Cyrus is going to overthrow everything. It says, I saw the ram pushing westward, northward, southward. Boy, that's kind of just like the bear having three ribs in its mouth. It's exactly like the bear having three ribs in its mouth. See? He's pushing westward, northward, southward. So he grabs all this. Whoosh, whoosh. Then he's going to go west, north, and south. Notice 513, 513, 500, 500, 500, 500. Okay? West, north, and south. That is going to be the final expansion of the Persian Empire after those three kings. That's the end of the three kings, that west, north, and south. Notice he goes south down here, 500, 500. We see west, 13, 13, north, and south. Okay, 500, 500. Okay, so all this green around here is what you're seeing. You're seeing the final expansion of the empire he just had described as being by these three kings. Why? Because after those three kings that expand greatly, it's going to tick off the Greeks. And the Greeks are going to send 300 Spartans after them in nothing but their skivvies with spears and shields. And they're going to be like, you know what? These guys aren't as tough as you think. These untouchables, we definitely touch them with our spears. Lots of them. So he pushes westward, northward, and southward, so that no beast might stand before him, and neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand. But he did according to his will, and became great. And as I was considering, behold, an he-goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth, and touched not the ground, and he had a notable horn between his eyes. It's a very fast goat. It's almost like he's flying, like he has wings, like that leopard had 4 wings. And he came to the ram that had 2 horns, when I had seen standing on the river, and I ran unto him in the fury of his power. Now, before we get into what do your commentators from Calvin onward think, how about what would Daniel think? He just got this other vision 2 years ago. Now he's got another one. Boy, this seems a lot like the vision I just had 2 years ago, just with different animals this time. And I saw him come close to the ram, and he was moved with choler against him. Choler is the worst thing you can be moved with. And smote the ram, and brake his 2 horns. And there was no power in the ram to stand before him, and he was cast down to the ground, and he stamped upon him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. He kicked his butt. Therefore, the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken. So the great horn is something different than the he-goat. Well, what's the he-goat? The he-goat is the Greeks. The great horn is Alexander. And for it, in other words, in its place, came up 4 notable ones towards the 4 wind of heaven. Hey, that's kind of like that leopard that had 4 heads. Maybe it's about the Turks conquering the Persians in the last days. No, maybe it's about like the 4 divisions of the German Panzer Division, and it's about the Blitzkrieg of the Battle of the Bulge. Okay. Or we could not be crazy and say maybe it's about Alexander the Great and his 4 generals that came after him that everybody knows about. That's in every commentary of all time. And out of one of them came forth a little horn. Hey, we had a little horn in the last one. Daniel's like, I know this guy. And he waxed exceedingly great towards the south and towards the east and towards the pleasant land. Oh, that's different. This one grows, and he goes north and westward, northward, and southward. This one goes south and east and towards the pleasant land. Is that Turkey taking over Persia? No, but close. It could come out of Turkey, and it could go south, down through Euphrates, east, down into Iraq, and towards the pleasant land, down towards Israel. It could come from Turkey. In fact, when we get into Daniel 11, we talk about these prophecies, and I'm not going to do it in this setting, it very much is likely to come from Turkey. But he's not going to take over Iran. Do you know how I know? Because there's a big fat river Euphrates between the 2 of them. And that's the border that stays until the kings of the east in the last days, and it's all over the book of Revelation. So we don't need to worry about that. It waxed great. What? The little horn waxed great, even unto the host of heaven. So the little horn is not boasting great things. He's waxing unto the host of heaven. What does that mean? He's growing up great even unto the host of heaven. So like the stars, he's becoming great like a star. And it casts down some of the host of the stars to the ground. He's going to cause angels to be thrown down to the ground and stamped on them. He's going to take some of the hosts and of the stars to the ground and stamp on them. He is going to cause angels to come down to the ground, and he is going to stamp on them. What does that mean? Does that mean he's going to dominate them? Sounds that way. Are there angels that fell with Satan before Adam and Eve? Is there any of that written? No, there's none of that written. There's nothing about Satan falling before Adam and Eve in the entire Bible. You could argue that Satan fell after the Garden of Eden. You could argue that from Ezekiel 28. You could argue that in the angels that sinned with women, there was a angelic host that was cast down. But this is future tense. He's seeing this prophecy of the future, of a future little horn that is going to cast down some of the stars of the ground and stamp upon them. Well, wait a minute. That would make this little horn equivalent to Satan itself. It's like a man, but it's diverse from them. So this man's going to get possessed by Satan after he gets shot in the head? That's not what we're saying here. It's not what we're saying here. It's like he's a strange, unknown God. I think people have worshipped Satan before. That his fathers knew not. I think a lot of people have worshipped the certain before, if you know your pagan history. It's not Satan. It's a different God. He magnified himself even unto the prince of the host. Who's the prince of the host? Who is in charge? Who makes him? He's making himself equivalent to the prince of the host. Who is the guy who's in charge of the angels? That's Christ. He's the Lord of the host. He's the Lord of the heavenly host. So the word prince, Makon, no, that's not it. Prince, Sar. Same word as Sargon, means king or lord or ruler. See, the head person, the captain, the chief, the general, the governor, the keeper, the lord, the master, the prince, the steward. Okay? Could you say that's Michael? The Bible never calls Michael the head of the host. He could be the captain, but the ruler, the prince of the host, when you see the word prince, it means ruler. Okay? We think prince and we think king's son. A ruler is a prince is a ruler that is subordinate to a king. Jesus is subordinate to the Father. But a Sar, remember, Sargon's name means legitimate king. Sargon, okay? Sar is king, okay? Gon is the legitimate. Sar means king. It means ruler. The king of the host. So who is the king of the host? It's Jesus. He's going to exalt himself even to the prince of, so to be equal to Jesus. He's going to call himself the Messiah. Joel Richardson says it's satanic to believe that the Antichrist is going to call himself the Messiah and the Jews are going to fall for it. That's exactly what the Bible says is going to happen. And by him the daily sacrifice shall be taken away. Notice it just says the tamid, the daily, but we understand it's the sacrifice. The tamid is the daily sacrifice, the morning and evening sacrifice. Okay? Will be taken away. Well, in order for the morning and evening sacrifice to be taken away, it has to be started. There's no temple right now when Daniel's prophesying. So they have to start it up, and then they have to take it away. And the place of the sanctuary was cast down. Now, does Antiochus Epiphanes or Nero or anyone else exalt themselves to be equal to the Lord of the host? His name is Antiochus Epiphanes. Epiphanes means manifestation. Epi means upon, and phani means appearance. Phanes is appearance, okay? So it does mean manifestation. Antiochus is just his name. Doesn't mean Antichrist. It's Antiochus. I forget what it means. Ante means against. Ochus, sight. Against he who holds. Maybe against he who restrains. I don't know. That's what Antiochus means. Does he exalt himself to the Lord of hosts? No, he does stop the daily sacrifice, though. And the place of his sanctuary was cast down. Does he cast down angels to the ground and trample on them? No, he definitely doesn't. And a host was given against the daily by reason of transgression. A host, a Saba, which is a mass of persons, was given him against the daily sacrifice by reason of the transgression. And it cast down the truth to the ground. So there's a bunch of people given over to him against the daily sacrifice. Is that because of the daily sacrifice? I think it is. So usually when you say against, in biblical terms, it's talking about, it's not necessarily saying we're against him. It just says, let's see this in the Hebrew. An army or host was given against the city over the daily sacrifice by transgression because of rebellion, and it was cast down and threw the truth to the ground, and on the earth, and it acted and it prospered and it succeeded. What's going on? Well, the rebellion is the great apostasy. It's the whole world basically saying, we want this weird Gnostic mixture of Judaism instead of the truth. And because they're doing this, and because they're instituting the Jewish sacrifice when Christ put an end to it and said it's done and it will never come back, it's given that against the daily or over the continual. Why? It is giving a host over the city because of the continual daily sacrifice, because of the transgression of rebellion. I want you to listen to what it's saying. The city is going to be given over Satan. Why? Because it is putting forward, it's rebelling against God, who made the one final sacrifice in Christ, and instead saying, no, we're going back to this sacrificial system. And God says, I've eliminated that sacrifice. Well, we've rebuilt it. Nope, it's not coming back. It's not going to make a comeback, okay? So it whacks to the host of heaven, and it says, he magnified himself to the prince of the host, and a host was given to him against the daily sacrifice by reason of the transgression. So what is he saying? He's saying the transgression is the daily sacrifice. Because of what they're doing, this is why they get the Antichrist. Because they're saying that the old covenant is still active, this is why they're given the Antichrist. Because the old covenant was meant to last until Christ came. And because you've restarted it, you're saying it's still in effect, it's going to go up to Antichrist. There, you want to be deceived? There, now you're deceived. And it cast truth to the ground, and it practiced and prospered. So what is it? Again, it's the little horn. Now, you see she in that Stuger Gensia thing that I was looking at. That's just the word horn is a feminine word. All Hebrew words have a masculine or feminine, natural to them. And the word horn is apparently a feminine word. Does that mean it's Mystery Babylon? Does that mean it could be like a false Holy Spirit? Could be. I mean, AI seems to be like a false Holy Spirit, so it could be. Then I heard one speaking, and another saint said unto a certain saint when she spoke, how long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the hosts to be trodden underfoot? Okay, so notice how he's saying the vision concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation, okay? So the entire time that they're doing the daily sacrifices and the abomination of desolation, with the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot, okay? The total time from when they start the daily sacrifice to the end of it being trodden underfoot. And he says, 2,300 days, and then the sanctuary will be cleansed. 2,300 days. So 2,300 days is divided into 360-day years. It's going to be 6.3, which means either the daily sacrifice starts after Daniel's 70th week starts, or it ends before Daniel's 70th week ends. One of the two. I'm not going to try to debate which one. I've speculated on it. I can't figure it out. I don't really care. He said unto me, under 1,200, 300 days, and then the sanctuary will be cleansed. Now, a lot of your commentators are going to say this was fulfilled in the Maccabees, and that it was 3.5 years before, or this 2,300 days until Judah Maccabees captured the temple back from Antiochus's forces, and he cleansed it. I don't think that was. I think it was actually either longer or shorter than that. So hold on. So it looks like it's possible that this 2,300 days could be the time from Antiochus coming and overthrowing Jerusalem, killing a bunch of people, and then having the temple turned into a temple to Zeus until the Maccabees get it back. That 2,300 days could be there. Hippolytus does say that, so I'm just going to give him that. Maybe he does. But the problem is this. Cast truth to the ground and practiced and prospered. The little horn comes out of the fourth kingdom. Here we have a little horn coming out of the goat, which represents the third kingdom. So we have something strange here. We have a little horn coming out of the Greeks and a little horn coming out of the Romans. But remember how the fourth beast is part Greek, part Roman. So what we're finding is something that has its prototype in Antiochus Epiphanes, its prototype in the ancient Roman Empire, but its final fulfillment in the one world government in the Antichrist. That's why we have two different little horns coming out. So he says, I heard one speaking to another saint, and unto a certain saint which spoke, how long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot? And he said, 1,300 days, 2,300 days, and the sanctuary will be cleansed. And it came to pass, when I, Daniel, had seen the vision and sought for meaning, then behold, there stood before me the appearance of a man. And I heard a man's voice between the banks of the Ulai, which called and said, Gabriel, make this man to understand the vision. So he's hearing a man say to Gabriel, make him understand the vision. Somebody is calling to Gabriel and telling him to make Daniel understand the vision. Okay? So he came near where I stood, and when he came, I was afraid and fell upon my face. But he said to me, understand, O son of man, for the time of the end shall be the vision. So this is Gabriel coming to him, telling him this is the time of the end. Okay? Who is commanding him? The man's voice between the banks of Ulai. That's probably the Lord. And he said, he was speaking to me, and a deep sleep fell on my face towards the ground, and he touched me. He set me upright, and he said, behold, I will make thee know what shall be the last end of the indignation, for at the time appointed the end shall be. So it's the time of the end. Well, the time of the end is in Antiochus Epiphanes, because nothing ends there unless you're a Maccabean trying to convince them that you are the kingdom of God, which they were. Nothing ends with Antiochus Epiphanes. He goes on, and then there's like his son and his son after him continue to rule. So that ain't it. He says, the ram that you saw, and the two horns, are the kings of Media and Persia. See, we don't have to interpret. Why is the bear lifted on one side? Why is one horn bigger than the other? It tells you it's Media and Persia. Okay? Maybe it's Turkey taking up. No, it tells you it's Media and Persia. And just so happened that Media controlled most of Turkey when this happened. You saw its kingdom extended from all the way into Lydia. Look at the Medes controlled all of Turkey. The Persians are going to control all of Turkey. How could this be about the Turks beating the Persians? It can't. And these guys will try to explain, it's about the Turks invading. The Persians controlled Turkey. And it got taken over by these guys over here. All of this got taken over by them. And it tells you it's about the Medes and Persians. The rough goat is the king of Grecia. There we go. Oh, it's about the Turks. Because the Turks. He came from over here. He's not in Turkey. And the great horn that between his eyes is the first king. Now that being broken, whereof four stood up for it, four kings will stand up out of that nation, but not in his power. So Antiochus the Epiphanes and the four generals that come after him. And in the latter time of their kingdom. Now we have a latter time of their kingdom. So how is this a latter time of their kingdom? Well, it could be Antiochus, because that's towards the end of their kingdom. When the transgressors are come to the full, a king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences shall stand up. Notice the other one was more stout than his fellows. He has a fierce countenance. His power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. And he shall destroy wonderfully, and he shall prosper in practice, and shall destroy the mighty and the holy people. A lot of that seems like Antiochus, but wait, he's mighty, but not by his own power. We don't know about Antiochus having any superpower behind him. And through his policy, it will cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace shall destroy many. Antiochus started going for warfare immediately. There was no peace in this. He shall also stand up against the prince of princes, and he shall be broken without hand. Did Antiochus stand up against the prince of princes? You could argue that he did when he attacked the temple. But he will be broken without hand. Now, the Jews have multiple stories about how he was killed without hand. We don't know how he died. We have no evidence, but Jewish conjecture on how he died. And the vision of the evening and the morning, which was told is true, wherefore shut up the vision, and it will be for many days. And I, Daniel, fainted and was sick, and certain days afterwards I rose up and did the king's business, and I was astonished at the vision, but none understood it. None understood it. Okay? Now, that's as far as I'm going to go with his prophecies, and here's why. The next one is with Darius, the son of Ahasuerus of the seed of the Medes, okay? This Ahasuerus seems to be, now that's a name for Xerxes. And Xerxes does have a son named Darius, but this isn't them. Are they of the seed of the Medes? Well, they are descended from Medes and Persians. But this isn't them. This is the one who was made king over the realm of the Chaldeans. Notice he is made king over the realm of the Chaldeans. So there's somebody over him who's making him king over the realm of Chaldeans. This seems to be another name for Astyages, and this seems to be his Cambyses, I think is his name, of the Medes, who is basically a puppet, with Cyrus being in control of everything. But the point is that's going to be like a decade later. Now, we will come to that, and I will cover it in the next one, but I've been talking a lot, so I need a break. And we're just going to finish this last thing, which is in Daniel 5. Belshazzar, okay? So he gets these two prophecies in the days of Belshazzar, and the next one he's going to get after this, like a year after this, okay? It says, Belshazzar made a great feast for 10,000 of his lord and drank wine before the 1,000. Belshazzar, while he tasted the wine, commanded to bring the golden and silver vessels, which his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken out of the temple which is in Jerusalem, that the king and his princes and wives and his concubines might drink therein. Then they brought the golden vessel that were taken out of the temple of God, which was at Jerusalem, and the king and his princes and his wives and concubines drank in them. They drank the wine and praised the gods of silver and of brass and gold and wood and stone. In the same hour came forth fingers of a man's hand and wrote over in the candle against the candlestick on the plaster of the wall of the king's palace, and the king saw the part of the hand that wrote. Then the king's countenance was changed, and his thoughts troubled him, so that the joints of his loins were loose, and his knees smote against one another. He was shaken in his knees. And the king cried aloud to bring the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers. And the king spake and said to the wise men of Babylon, whosoever shall read this writing and show me the interpretation thereof, shall be clothed with scarlet and have a chain of gold around his neck, and he will be the third ruler in the kingdom. Then came in all, so he's the second ruler in the kingdom. His father is the first. He's the second. Then came in all the king's wise men, so they could not read the writing and make known to the king the interpretation thereof. Then the king Belshazzar was greatly troubled, and his countenance was changed in him, and his lords were astonished. And the queen, by reason of the words of the king and his lords, came to the banquet house, and the queen spake, O king, live forever. Let not thy thoughts trouble thee, or thy countenance be changed. There's a man in the kingdom in whom is the spirit of the holy gods. And in the days of thy father, light and understanding and wisdom, like the wisdom of the gods, was found in him. Whom the king Nebuchadnezzar, thy father the king, I say, thy father, made the master of the magicians, the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers. For as much as an excellent spirit, knowledge, and understanding, interpreting of good dreams, and showing of hard sentences, and dissolving of doubts, were found in the same Daniel, who the king named Belshazzar. Now let Daniel be called, and he will show the interpretation. Then Daniel was brought before the king. The king spake to Daniel, said, Art thou Daniel, which art of the children of the captivity of Judah, who the king brought forth out of the Jewry? I have heard of thee, the spirit of the gods is in thee, and that the light of understanding, excellent wisdom is found in thee. And know the wise men, the astrologers, have been brought before me, that they should read this writing and make known to me the interpretation thereof, but they could not show me the interpretation of this thing. And I have heard of thee, and thou canst make interpretations and dissolve doubts. Now if thou can read the writing and make known to me the interpretation thereof, thou shalt be clothed with scarlet, and have a golden chain around my neck, and shalt be the ruler in the kingdom. Then Daniel answered and said before the king, Let thy gifts be to thyself, and give thy rewards to another. Yet I will read the writing to the king, and make known to you the interpretation. O thou king, the Most High God gave Nebuchadnezzar thy father a kingdom and majesty and glory and honor. And for the majesty that he gave him, all peoples, nations, languages trembled and feared before him. Whom he would, he slew, and whom he kept alive. And whom he would set up, and whom he would, he put down. But when his heart was lifted up and his mind hardened in pride, he was deposed from his kingly throne, and they took his glory from him. So who is he saying this about? Nebuchadnezzar. Now, Nebuchadnezzar, who took his glory from him? He was deposed, and they took his glory from him. So he's saying, the Most High God gave Nebuchadnezzar a kingdom. And then he said, and they took his glory from him. The Most High God, he calls they. They took his glory from him. Most High God gave Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom, and then they took it from him. And he was driven from the sons of men, and his heart was like the beasts, and his dwelling was like a wild asses, and they fed him with the grass of the oxen, and the body was wet with the dew of heaven, till he knew that the Most High God ruled in the kingdom of men, and he appointed over whoever he will. So Nebuchadnezzar says it's the watchers. It's by the decree of the watchers, okay? But Nebuchadnezzar is just giving his interpretation of things, okay? Daniel doesn't say that. Nebuchadnezzar says that. He said God gave him the kingdom, and then they took it from him. Now, remember, in the Babylonian understanding, the Trinity is three different gods. It's Enlil, Ninlil, and Utu, okay? They still have these beliefs among them. They keep overlaying different gods of them, but they keep putting together a trinity. Most your pagans do this. They keep putting together trinities, but they're always three gods. It's typically two men and women. When you get to the Japhethite systems, they tend to be three men because they see them as avatars of one another, and typically all male. But your ancient Near Eastern ones are almost all two men and women. That's what I'm learning. But they're seen as distinct gods, not a god who is a they. Notice how Daniel has a they and a God. God gave him his kingdom and they took it back. God gave him his kingdom and they took it back. He's not talking about God and his divine council. He's not talking about God and his heavenly watchers. He's talking about a God who is a they. This is consistent throughout the whole Bible. Whenever you hear a Hebrew Israelite speak, when you hear foreigners speak, they might say things like the gods. So you'll see Nebuchadnezzar say that. You'll see Job and his companions saying that. Remember, they're not Israelites. They're other people, okay? So he says, and thou his son, O Belshazzar, has not humbled thine heart, though thou knowest all this, but has lifted up thyself against the Lord of heaven, and they brought the vessels of the house before thee, and thou and thy lord, thy wives and their concubines, have drunken wine in them, and have praised the gods of silver and gold, of iron and wood and stone, and have not seen or hear or known that God, whose hand is in thy breath, and whose are all their ways, is not glorified. Glasses off. Then was the part of the hand sent from him, and then the writing was written, and the writing says, many, many, tekel upsaran. Here's the interpretation of things. Many. God has numbered thy kingdom and has finished this. Tekel. Thou art weighed in the balances and found wanting. Perez. So upsaran. Upfarsin. Farsi is the language of the Persians. Upharsi. Perez. The kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. So he's giving him writing. This is kind of like an angelic tongue he's reading, because I don't know what language this would be. Now we have to balance. Mene means numbered, balance. Upfarsin, divided. So that's literally what the words mean, okay? Apparently. Numbered. Balance, divided. So in other words, weighed in a balance. Numbered, weighed, divided. It's describing his kingdom being divided between two guys. They've already planned on dividing it, and they're going to conquer it, and they're going to split it up between them. It's the Medes and the Persians. The kingdom was divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. Then commanded Belshazzar, and they clothed Daniel with scarlet and put a chain of gold around his neck and made a proclamation concerning him that he should be the third ruler in the kingdom. And that night Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, was slain, and Darius the Median took the kingdom, being about 62 years old. So he's telling you Darius the Mede is 62 years old when he takes the kingdom, okay? This takes you right to Daniel 9 in the first year of Darius, the son of Azurius, the seed of the Medes, which was made king over the realm of the Chaldeans. He's a 62-year-old man. He's going to die not long thereafter, and Daniel is then going to be under Cyrus, okay? So let's read it. He was just given a prophecy in the third year of Belshazzar, okay? I don't think we're going to do this right now. That's 2 hours. I think that's good. In the first year, he's going to give this Daniel 70th week prophecy. Now remember, the last two prophecies largely demonstrated the Greeks being given over to the Persians, okay? Now he's going to have another prophecy that's about something totally different once the Persians have taken over. And then Daniel, he's going to get the 70 weeks out of there. And then in Daniel 10 through 12, he's going to get the interpretation of the 70th week. Okay? So he gets a prophecy about the first Nebuchadnezzar's prophecy about the 4 kingdoms, then Daniel's prophecy about the 4 beasts, then Daniel's prophecy about the Greeks taking over the Persians, then he experiences the Greek being taken over the Persians, and now that they're taking over the Persians, he's going to get a couple more prophecies. The 70 weeks prophecy, and then the 70th week prophecy, or the prophecy that's going to lead from Antiochus into the 70th week. Okay? So he's going to get different things after the Greeks get there, but it's all going to be related to the times of the Gentile captivity. So before we get to all that, again, we have Belshazzar in 7, in chapter 6, we're going to also have Darius and how Darius treats Daniel. He's only going to be there for 2 years, so he's going to get his prophecy, and then he's going to get the lion's den experience, and that's going to be the end of Darius's life. And then he is going to get this next prophecy in the 3rd year of Cyrus. Okay, so the 3rd year of Cyrus seems to correspond because he seems to begin ruling maybe after Darius, but Darius seems to be under him ruling just the Babylonians. So I would assume that all this stuff in Daniel 9 through 10, 11, and what we're going to read in chapter 8 all takes place over like 3 years. It all seems to be very close in order. So he's going to have a gap of a little bit of time. It's probably not that long a time, but most of these prophecies are going to happen in a pretty short order, and then they're going to be done by the time Cyrus takes over, which is going to be... His last prophecy is going to be 559, so 556-ish. He's going to be king of Babylon in 539, it looks like. He'll be king of Media in 549. King of Babylon is 539. And then he's going to set the Jews free, and it's going to take you right into Ezra. Okay? So that's all we're going to cover today. Again, sorry I got obstructed by ChatGPT being a beehole of a machine. But I just want to show you guys, sometimes you got to need to get in the Little Hebrew and get these words, and sometimes your little Power Bible is not going to be sufficient because it's just going to have the base word and not the tense of the word. And sometimes you're going to have to look at resources, including things like ChatGPT, and they're not going to misbehave. But we've gone through 2 of Daniel's prophecies. We have introduced the little horn in 2 different versions, one coming out of the Roman kingdom, one coming out of the Greek kingdom. And the reason is because the Roman kingdom represents the end times world government. The Greek kingdom is going to represent the Antichrist himself. They're both 4 types of something that's going to exist in the last days that's going to be partly Greek, partly Roman. Okay? So hope you guys are blessed by this. Hope you have a great rest of your week. Batman out. Peace.
Peace, I'm out. I'm Batman.